Hi, how are you guys doing? My name is Simon Caspersen. I'm the co-founder of Space 10, a research and design lab in Copenhagen. And I'm here today to share our explorations into co-living, shared living, co-housing, whatever we want to call it. But basically new living arrangements that prioritizes access over ownership. I prepared a little presentation, so let us get going. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor to be a speaker on a program where uh, Jan Gehl is also featured. He's one of my legends for sure, as well as it's a pleasure also to see Grace Kim on the program as well. We've been really inspired by her initiatives around co-living as well. But let's jump into it. So yeah, I'm from Space 10. We are research and design lab in Copenhagen, and we're on a mission to create a better everyday life for people and the planet. We are 100% funded and dedicated to IKEA. IKEA is a relatively successful Swedish furniture company, and we work as their global innovation lab while remaining external. And what we're doing is basically looking at the big shifts happening in society, from societal shifts to our environmental shifts to technological shifts, and look at how that will actually impact the everyday life of people. So our starting point in our research is always how the world is changing and people's everyday life, and not IKEA as a company. I think that we can all sort of reflect on what is actually the biggest creative challenges that we're facing today. And at least for us at Space 10, it's really looking at how do we meet the needs of all people within the means of the planet. This is a major challenge, and we need to work together in order to actually solve this. So before we get into co-housing, co-living, shared living, just want to give you a quick introduction to Space 10. We live here in Copenhagen in the meatpacking district. This is our office where we work. This is actually the space I'm sitting in right now. This is our test kitchen where we explore future food. We have a little gallery and sort of open office in the ground floor where we also do talks, exhibitions, workshops, and sometimes we also throw a little party. And down in the basement, we have what we call our makery. So a place where we can prototype fast, where we can actually build prototypes and test them on ground. And we have this saying at Space 10, if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. And what we mean by that is we always strive to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us. So instead of just being the people that we are here permanently at Space 10, we really strive to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us. So that means that we have people coming in residencies, or we collaborate with other companies and startups. So at the moment, we are working with some educational institutions like MIT, Howard, YAC in Barcelona, Institute of Advanced Architecture, as well as Strelka in Moscow. And then we host a public program. We really want to invite in people who are smarter than us that we can learn from, and they can share their ideas and what they are passionate about. And then we, of course, also open it up to our community. We also pop up in cities around the world where we do either pop-ups or satellite offices. Here we are in New York. This is from London. We've been to Shanghai. And recently, we actually opened our first satellite office in Delhi, India. But that is not why we're here today. I just want to introduce you guys to a little bit of the background for why we at Space 10 are interested in co-housing. I want to introduce you to one of our projects called One Shared House 2030, as well as the Urban Village project. So let's dive into it. As we know, 1.5 million people move to a city every week. That's a lot of people. To accommodate all of these people moving into our cities, we will actually almost have to double our urban environment within a few decades. That's going to be equivalent to building a city the size of Paris every other month for the next 30 years. That's insane. But it actually also gives us an opportunity, an unprecedented opportunity to take a step back, really look at our cities and see, can we actually rethink our cities? Can we actually design our cities going forward based on the learnings that we have today? Because what are the challenges we're actually facing in cities today? Well, one is lack of affordable housing in almost every major city in the world. Simply put, we are not building enough affordable homes to keep up with the demand, meaning that it has become much harder for ordinary people to actually find a place to live that they can afford, and then we're not even mentioning students and elderly who struggle even more. Around the planet, a lot of people move to cities in search of better lives, but not everyone can actually afford to live where the promise of the city lies, which means that they are pushed to the fringes, far away from schools, jobs, services, even electricity, sanitation, which means that if left unchecked, social wide gap widens, and informal settlements rise, and informal economies are created, and that doesn't benefit anyone. So challenge one, our cities are not affordable. Challenge two is that the way we actually build our cities are not sustainable. Cities are one of the biggest driver of the climate crisis we are in, especially the construction industry is incredibly harmful. So we really find ourselves at a crossroads where we are facing an accelerating climate crisis while we are simultaneously overstretching the finite resources of our planet. So in order to double our cities in the coming decades, we can either continue to hurtle down this path that we're already on, which UN's climate panel has told us where it's going to lead, or we can explore a new way forward, a better way forward. And I definitely believe that it's time to rewrite the rules. The challenge number three that we see when we look at how we have designed cities today is that we see an increased loneliness and social isolations within our city. So even though we're all moving closer together, and even though we are more connected than ever, we are feeling increasingly lonely, anxious, and stressed in our cities. And despite we spend so much time on social media, our social networks are actually smaller than they were 50 years ago. So many have sort of lost a sense of community where they live. We don't say hi to our neighbors. The streets are filled with anonymous faces. And that is a big challenge because we actually know when we look at happiness that the quality of our social relationships is the best predictor of whether we are happy or not. Not our career path, not our health, not our income, things like that. They all play a part. But if we have to actually single something out, then our social relationships and the quality of those are actually what defines whether we are happy or not. And we can see that people in cities are really craving a sense of belonging and community where they live. So that was sort of our starting point. And we were like, okay, how the heck do we fix this? Like, this are big systemic challenges. And at Space 10, we are always striving to see patterns where most see chaos. And the challenges are indeed extensive, but so are the opportunities. And cities are right there at the heart of the problem, and therefore also at the heart of the solution. So we really thought, okay, let's look at cities. Let's look at how we can explore a new way forward for our built environment. And weirdly enough, our journey of fixing our cities started here. This is a picture from the co-housing movement in the late 60s Denmark. And the reason why we find this image so interesting was because it triggered a lot of imagination for us. Could co-living actually be the answer to these challenges, these very modern challenges that we are facing today in our cities? We looked at, could we tackle the challenge of affordable housing by creating co-housing arrangements where we enable more affordable housing through better usage of space and by sharing obviously our spaces, but also our living costs? Could we address our unsustainable lifestyles by favoring access over ownership? So people in these shared living community could pool their resources instead of every household having to buy and store the same items, like the drill for that once a year job, for instance. Why not share one between many? And finally, could we combat social isolation and loneliness in cities by unlocking the multiple benefits of living in a tight-knit community where you actually have a sense of belonging, where you have other individuals nearby that can help each other out, from looking out after the kids to share dinners to help out with home maintenance. So yeah, this definitely looks like a throwback to some past utopia. But shared living is, of course, nothing new. Humans have lived communal since the dawn of time. And recently we have seen, a rise of new types of co-living spaces, which has really grown in popularity, especially in cities such as London and New York, where the housing crisis is especially acute. So we got really curious, actually. We can see some benefits of co-housing, co-living, shared living. But what type of co-living places are people actually interested in? So what we did was we launched a project called One Shared House 2030. And this is basically an online survey, which we did with our friends, Anton and Irene, where we designed it as an application form for an co-living space to open in 2030. And the project is an online survey, and I think that, at least for me, I hate online surveys. So we knew that if we were actually having people to fill this out voluntarily, we needed to make it fun and exciting, which means that Anton and Irene helped us make it a really engaging survey. And what it does is basically asking people a bunch of questions. So really asking, which household goods and services, including kitchen, workspaces, smart devices, childcare, self-driving cars, that people would be willing to share, and what kind of co-living space would be uniquely suited for them. So everything from location, pets, what are the pros, what are the cons, what kind of people would you like to live with? And this way, we really hope that people from all over the world could help us inform both their preferences and concerns when it comes to a modern way of co-living. And the information we have collected through this is completely open source. So you can, right after this talk, go into One Shared House 2030, and you can actually see all the answers. And we have already seen that a lot of developments are using these data to make better decisions when it comes to designing co-housing going forward. But let's actually have a look at the results of this. And crazy enough, people from almost 150 countries took part in this. And if we look at the results, then it turns out that most people would actually prefer to live in small, tight-knit communities. And we found that incredibly interesting because many of the co-living firms of today, these big ones like the Collective, Pure House, Common House, and We Live, they are rolling out these co-living spaces with hundreds of bedrooms and huge common areas. And yet, at least according to our survey, most people would actually prefer to be part of the smallest possible community of 4 to 10 people. The only exception are couples with children who prefer to be part of a slightly bigger community of 10 to 15 or 10 to 25 people, presumably to both share the workload of looking after the kids. But in any case, no one says they prefer to live with hundreds of other people. And the main reason that people would like to co-live is actually to socialize. You might have thought that the reason why we want to co-live is to save costs or to live in a neighborhood you might otherwise not be able to afford. But when we look at the survey, it's actually a new ability to socialize, why people are attracting to co-housing. Another really interesting thing is that everyone who participated was willing to share at least something. But obviously some of these things like internet workspaces, gardens are the things that most people would be willing to share. But people would prefer to have their own bathrooms and bedrooms, and people would rather help clean than have daily dinners. Another interesting finding is that people would actually prefer to live with people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different age groups, which we thought was really interesting because we are today living in these echo chambers on social media, and then suddenly the survey showed that people are actually interested in diversity. But there were some preferences, and childless couples and single women were the top choices of the people. Teens and babies, not so much, or single dads if you live in Asia. I don't know what's up with single dads in Asia, but they didn't rate very high in our survey. Whereas our fluffy friends, pets, they are very welcome across the world, which we also find interesting. People's top concern is a lack of privacy, which is really understandable. But for the people who are above 60s, then it's actually other people's mess and silly arguments that is quite the concern for that age group. And you can dive into much more of the results on One Shared House 2030. There is a pool of resources to dive into. So that was One Shared House, and suddenly we had an understanding of what people would actually prefer when it comes to co-housing. Then the next project is a project we call the Urban Village Project, and here we actually took the learnings from One Shared House 2030 and said, okay, how do we create a vision for livable, sustainable, and affordable homes of tomorrow? And this is the vision I'm quickly going to present you for today. And the urban village, as the name might suggest, looks at how we can rethink how we actually set ourselves up in urban environments. How can we rethink the way we design, build, finance, and share our future homes, neighborhoods, and cities? And the aim here is really to address the challenges that we that we talked about in the beginning of this short presentation, around how can we allow for cheaper homes to enter the market, how can we make it easier to live sustainable, and how can we make it a lot more both affordable and also ensure more fulfilling ways of living together. So here's how we envision that to happen. So what we envision is cross-generational shared living communities in the hearts of our cities. So we are looking at how can we combine private living spaces with shared facilities as well as public spaces, so that the urban village is also open to the neighborhood around it. And really looking at how can we ensure that people are part of a vibrant community right where they live. Because again, after all, the quality of our relationships is what defines whether we are happy or not. And shared living has really found to both boost our health and happiness. Then we also know that you could say the modernist thinking of one size fits all is long behind us, and that also goes for the urban village project, where we simply say, okay, one size doesn't fit all. So we propose to offer multiple apartment types instead of these standard family homes, because people don't live like that anymore. So whether you are single, a family of four, a retired couple, or a group of students, you have options in the urban village. And if life happens and you need to change your living space, then you could simply stay in the community by swapping apartments with others also looking for a change. The Urban Village project also looks to give access to shared facilities and the services that you need on a daily basis. So whether that is communal dinners, shared daycare, urban gardening, mobility services, they are right there where you live. And that is really the building blocks for both a thriving community and also a very supportive daily life. And our approach has been that, you know, a sustainable life shouldn't feel like a burden. So we are looking to really see how can we foster access over ownership and give people access to a lot more, from shared kitchens to sensory gardens to workspaces to, you know, a shared living room, a farm, public gardens, etc. And then again, ensure that what you need of daily groceries is right there where you live. So we are really looking to make it an integrated part of everyday life. And then of course it should be seamless. So it will be integrated solutions like water harvesting, renewable energy, local food production, and localized composting. So that would not only help you take care of the planet, but actually also reduce your living costs. And one of the really interesting things around the Urban Village project is that we are not looking at creating a building, but a modular system built in wood. And because it's modular, we can actually create much more flexible homes for people. So if you need, if you have a need for a terrace or something else, it's much easier to actually add that to your apartment. And because it's modular, we also open up a circular material loop. So everything is designed for easy assembly and disassembly. So this means that if something breaks or the purpose of the building changes, we don't need to landfill this building, but we can simply repurpose it or recycle, upcycle the things that are broken or needs to be changed. So everything will be built in cross-laminated timber wood, which is actually shows now to outperform both steel and concrete, which are the two sort of favorite workhorses in today's construction. but both are really damaging to the environment, whereas wood actually captures CO2. And we would always suggest to build in natural materials, so whether that is wood or bamboo or something else. And then again, it's a modular system, so it's not about building one building in one city. It's actually a scalable system that can work both as, a high rise or, an infill in Copenhagen. And we are looking to see how that can be applied to cities around the world. However, these are clearly renders, as we haven't been able to scale the urban village project yet. We are still working on it. So while we are waiting to realize that the very first village, we are working on a book at the moment, which I'm really happy to share with you. It's not something that we have gone out publicly with, but we are looking at how these thoughts around the shared city, life between buildings, like Jan Giel is featured in the book, as well as the home of Grace Kim, who are also with you today, as well as a lot of other pioneers that we admire and that we want to celebrate in this book. So we travel to over 50 different cities, including Seoul. Actually, the Seoul High Line is also featured in the book, and basically celebrate the projects that we find inspiring and that we think are examples of how we should design our cities going forward. So look out for that book. It will be published in spring. And just want to end on a quote by Bjarke Ingels, who is also in the book, who says, as human beings, we have the power to give form to the world we want to live in. So if we're thinking about cities, we have to make them more like the way we wish the world to be. And I really like that every time we have a chance to influence the environment around us, let's aim for making it the way we wish the rest of the world to be. And that reminds me, the future is not a destination, it's a direction. Thank you, guys.